It starts. And by the way, lead, listen, our parents grew up in the lead generation when there was lead in every paint, every gasoline. The number one source for us is our mothers because it's inherited generationally. When women are pregnant, it's normal to lose bone, but most lead is stored in the bone. So out comes the lead in utero.
All right, guys, Dr. Daniel Pompa here today. He is here to answer a lot of questions. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, can't wait.
First off, let's start with why everyone is sick right now. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, that's a great question because that's what I do. Look, it would be the simple response would be, hey, look what's happened to the diet, in the United States of America. And that absolutely is part of it. But there's a hidden reason that most people, even alternative doctors, are missing. And that's the level of toxicity that we're exposed to today. I mean, you could look at that escalation of toxins since after World War II, but it's even gone more crazy in the last 20 years. So we're being exposed to not just regular toxins that most people think are of toxins, but neurotoxins. These are toxins that go deep into your nerve tissue. The biggest one is the brain. And it's driving autoimmune, the thyroid epidemic, hormone resistance, which is hormone problems, simply not feeling well, anxiety, brain fog, no energy. All of it is driven by these types of toxins that accumulate in our tissue. And we're seeing a massive decline in health because of it.
So what exactly are these neurotoxins?
Okay, so things like heavy metals, I'll start with what most people are familiar with. Mercury is a neurotoxin. If you look at studies, mercury in the brain is the big problem. It accumulates there from silver fillings. Silver fillings contain 50% mercury, and that mercury vaporizes into the brain, and there it is locked for life unless you do something to get it out. And that's part of what I teach. Aluminum today is another neurotoxin. We're massively exposed to aluminum like no time ever in the history of man. It's in our water, it's in our soils, because they're even putting it in jet fuel to make the jet fuel more efficient. So they're saving millions, billions of dollars. But unfortunately, it's creating acid rain and ending up in our water, in our food, and obviously in our bodies. I mean, of course, deodorants, antiperspirants. I mean, there's other places we're picking up aluminum. But the fact is that aluminum and mercury accumulation in the brain, you wonder why so many people are having brain fog, the drive of dementia. And there's one other problem, and there's another toxin that is creating a perfect storm today of disease. It's called glyphosate. And it's the active ingredient in Roundup. It's a pesticide, herbicide that they're spraying on most of our food supply. It's in 60% of rainfall. So it too is basically, coming into our bodies unknowing. But here's the problem. It opens up our protective barriers, our gut barrier and our blood-brain barrier. And it allows the toxins like aluminum, mercury that I just spoke about to cross deeper into the brain and other tissues. As a matter of fact, 2012 study, senior scientist at MIT, Stephanie Seneff, she was one of the first to do a study showing that glyphosate opens up the blood-brain barrier and allows these toxins to cross deeper, driving the epidemic of autism, dementia, Alzheimer's. I mean, she went through a lot of different diseases, and now that study's been duplicated many times. So we have this combination of something that's opening up our protective barriers, and then the exposure to so many things that we've been exposed to. The number one source of mercury is our moms. So ladies listening, this is not to scare you, but it's reality. There's a study called the DSH study. The number of those silver fillings that I said contain 50% mercury is proportional to how much we find in the baby's brain in utero.
Oh my gosh.
And that was an autopsy study, so very accurate. So the number of fillings proportional to how much mercury is in the baby's brain, that's where that starts. And by the way, lead, listen, our parents grew up in the lead generation when there was lead in every paint, every gasoline. The number one source for us is our mothers because it's inherited generationally. When women are pregnant, it's normal to lose bone, but most lead is stored in the bone. So out comes the lead in utero. So from the womb to the tomb, we are being exposed to many of these neurotoxins. Obviously, I haven't discussed them all, but there's a few.
That is scary, man. So that aluminum foil that I do all my baking on,
Another exposure. Matter of fact, I
As a B2B marketer, you know how noisy the ad space can be. If your message isn't targeted to the right audience, it just disappears into the noise. With LinkedIn ads, you could precisely reach the professionals who are more likely to find your ad relevant with LinkedIn targeting capabilities. You can reach them by job title, industry, company, and more. Stand out with LinkedIn ads and start converting your B2B audience into high-quality leads today. LinkedIn ads allows you to build the right relationships, drive results, and reach your customers in a respectful environment. You'll have direct access to and build relationships with decision makers. 1 billion members are on their platform, 180 million senior level executives, and 10 million C-level executives. You'll be able to drive results with targeting and measurement tools built specifically for B2B in technology. LinkedIn generated 2 to 5x higher return on ad spend than any other social media platform, and you'll work with a partner who respects the B2B world you operate in. 79% of B2B content marketers said LinkedIn produces the best results for paid media. LinkedIn has been a great platform for me to also find interesting podcast guests. If you're interested, start converting your B2B audience into high-quality leads today. We'll give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/social to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/social. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be.
did a YouTube video that went crazy out there because I showed if you're cooking in this stuff, if it's touching fatty food, acid food, hot food, you're bringing aluminum directly into your food, which is going to end up directly in you. I mean, people listening don't have to take my opinion. Just Google what aluminum does to your nerves in your brain.
Yeah.
It's not a pretty picture.
So what's the alternative then? To use the white one, the parchment paper?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was good you knew that. Yeah.
Wow.
Very good.
I've been aware, man. I've been dodging microplastics. We got the glass water here.
Yeah, right. Because again, as we look at plastics that are endocrine disruptors, or these things that can mimic certain hormones and drive more hormone problems. And again, when you look at why most people don't feel well today, hormones is a problem. But what are we doing? As a society, we're taking more hormones.
Right.
But these toxins that I'm referencing drive something called cellular inflammation. So imagine, on every cell in your body, you have receptors to every hormone. Estrogen, progesterone, thyroid hormone, all of them. And these receptors, the hormone has to come in contact with them and then get its message in the cell or themselves into the cell. If something's blocking those receptors, then it doesn't matter what your blood levels of the hormones are. They can't get their message in the cell. It's called hormone resistance. We're familiar with insulin resistance, where you have plenty of insulin, type 2 diabetes, you have plenty of insulin, but you can't get it in the cell. The hormone is resistant. The receptor is resistant to the hormone. This is happening to most people today, unknowing to them. So they're looking at their estrogen levels, their testosterone levels, and they're taking the hormone. But the analogy is this: if you just dump gasoline on the outside of a car, it doesn't make it run.
Right.
The answer is no. You have to get the gas in the car. The hormones have to function by getting their message of themselves into the cell. But these toxins are driving inflammation of the cell and blocking the receptors to the hormones.
Wow.
And if you don't communicate well with your hormones at the cellular level, you don't feel well. You don't burn fat. You end up with weight loss resistance. You end up with no energy, because all of that is hormone related.
Interesting. Yeah, I knew there was a testosterone problem. I didn't know estrogen was a problem for women now too.
Yeah. And look, these toxins are driving our cells not to hear hormones, creating this resistance to the hormones. And it's not solved. It's not as simple as just being able to take hormones. But it's also, as I mentioned, getting into the brain. You have a place in the brain called the pituitary hypothalamus. The hypothalamus takes in hormone information from the body, and then it makes some judgments based on that information. Tells the pituitary, produce more of this hormone or that hormone, thyroid hormone, and then it keeps your balance normal. But what if that control tower is being poisoned by these neurotoxins, which studies show is happening? Now your control tower doesn't work. You're downstream trying to fix your adrenals. You're downstream trying to fix your thyroid, trying to balance this out, going, what's wrong? Playing the hormone game seems to work in the beginning, but now it's not. Your control tower could be the problem. Your cellular inflammation driven by toxins could be the problem. And you're wondering, what's wrong? I don't feel well. And I'm doing all these things. I've changed my diet. I'm taking hormones. I still can't lose weight. I still have no energy, etc.
Right. Our lifespan has been dropping over the recent years.
First time in history that the younger generation will not outlive their parents, sadly.
That's scary.
Yeah.
Super scary because it should be the other way around.
Yeah, it always has been through history until now.
Especially with all the health advancements. But with stuff like glyphosate, I don't even know if that's fixable.
Yeah.
60% of rain.
Yeah, here's the thing. It's people have to really understand how to do real detox. It's not as simple as doing a sauna, although I'm a big fan of saunas, but it's not that simple. What's happening is real detox is a cellular problem. These pathways that are in our cells that detox us day in, day out, even when you make energy in your cell, it makes toxic waste that your cell has to get rid of. Once these pathways have been compromised, now you're in big trouble. So part of what I've taught for 20 years is how to upregulate those cellular detox pathways. And now we have some resistance, right? I mean, our body can deal with what we're, the onslaught of toxins that we're dealing with to a point.
Right.
I mean, to a point.
Dude, the root canal thing is scary. So basically, if you get a root canal, that's going to affect your brain health.
Yeah. Look, root canals are one of these things that I call these hidden causes of people going, what's wrong with my life? What happened to my health? Autoimmune diagnosis, cancer diagnosis, what happened? And even the best alternative practitioners oftentimes overlook the hidden infection, which comes from a root canal. And root canals, here's what happens. They go in, they pull the root out of the tooth from a cavity. We can't save it, so they pull it out. And they basically, when they take the root out, they put a filler in it, they seal it.
Yeah.
The problem is that there's these things called microtubules that feed the root. Those bacteria run in those microtubules, and there's miles of these things just in one tooth.
Wow.
And they sit back there and hide, and you seal it in. But what's happening is those bacteria are going systemic, meaning they end up in your bloodstream, compromising immunity. And we know there's studies that show on the side of a root canal is an increase in breast cancer on the side of a root canal. I had two doctors that one was a throat cancer and one was a thyroid cancer case. And they had been everywhere. And both of them, these didn't happen simultaneously, but both of them ended up contacting me because they were at one of my seminars, who knows. But I said, do you have a root canal on that right side? And the one case, the other one, I don't remember the side. And the fact is she did. She ended up getting the root canal dealt with because I sent her some articles, different things to read. Yeah. And it put her cancer in remission.
Wow.
Like literally, she went in 2 months later, the doctor said, it's gone.
Just from taking it out?
Just from taking it out.
Holy crap.
Just from taking it out. The other was a male and had throat cancer on the side of a root canal. So I told you a story just before this. I was in Dr. Jerry Curatola. He's a dentist in New York City, famous doctor. He's done a lot of the famous people that we know today. Yeah. And he said, Dan, you have to come in here a second. And I went in, there was this woman crying. He goes, do you remember her? And I didn't remember until he told me her name. 15 years ago, I referred her to get 9 root canals out of her mouth. And I said, if you don't deal with this, you're going to end up more sick. I'm not going to be able to help you. And she told me that she didn't have the money to do it. She put it off. Yeah. And here she is now. She ended up with a cancer diagnosis.
Jeez.
So with tears, she was there now removing this source of most likely the cancer.
Wow. And you also said most people do not get their wisdom teeth out the proper way.
Wisdom teeth removal needs to be done correctly. We can talk about that. What happens when you take a wisdom tooth out? It heals over. And it heals over with a void of bone. In that void, that lucency in the bone is where infection hides. Now, 20, 25, 30 years later, all of a sudden you have an autoimmune diagnosis, or you simply don't feel well, can't figure it out, what's going on. And oftentimes it's these hidden infections. So when you get a wisdom tooth out or any tooth removed, you have to use a process where they use something called PRF, plasma-rich fibrin, where they take your own blood, they fill that hole so you form bone, so these infections don't form. And by the way, you don't see these infections on regular x-rays. You have to use what is called a cone beam.
Wow.
It's a 3D CAT scan of the jaw, and that shows the lucency that these infections hide. Now, here's the other caution. Many people will take these cone beams to their regular dentist and they read them as plain films. You have to have a dentist read them who is trained to look for cavitation and also has the right software even to be able to use this 3D type of scan where they can see these areas of lucency. Here's a story. So a friend of mine, he had bizarre 21 years of liver pain and pain throughout his body. He texted me on the way out of the dentist office and said, Dan, could my pain be gone? Could it be that simple? Because his pain was gone. Leaving the dentist, he got these things out. He said he felt like he was reconnected to his body. And my answer was, I don't know, we'll see. That was 8 years ago. And he hasn't had pain since.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's the power of getting to the cause, as we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
The cause of why people don't feel well. I mean, this is it. And these are the things that are ignored, of course, by regular allopathic medicine. You know, they're not causative most of the time because the system's not set up for that.
Right.
But alternative doctors are missing these real causes of why people don't feel well.
And chronic pain seems to be pretty common these days for a lot of people.
Chronic pain is. And again, people will chase it with multiple things, right? Just, trying to figure out what's wrong with the pain when it could be these types of toxins that are accumulating in our tissue. Of course, other infections, Lyme disease goes for the joints.
Right.
But again, if you look at Lyme disease, parasites, candida, these are opportunistic infections that typically affect people whose immune system is already being distracted by something. So now we're talking about these cavitations, these infections, root canals. Oftentimes, these are the places that lower your immune system, these infections here, and then set you up for the Lyme, the parasites. So, but all of these infections can drive the pain throughout the body. But we better ask the question, why is our body allowing these types of infections? They're opportunistic. And we've learned that with better testing, 90% of certain populations, communities in the United States has Lyme. Why aren't they all sick is the question. Because their body has been distracted and it allowed the Lyme to go throughout the body.
Wow.
So it's not just about killing Lyme or parasites or candida. We have to look at what allowed them in the first place.
Interesting. 90% of certain communities have Lyme disease?
Yeah, but they're not all sick, just like Epstein-Barr. I think it's 70% of the population has had Epstein-Barr virus. Why didn't everyone get sick? Some people's immune system that's already compromised by the buildup of toxins will allow them to be the ones that end up getting sick.
Interesting. So that being said, what's your take on all these parasite cleanses?
Look, there's a time and a place. But when I was sick myself, I battled parasites, cleanse after cleanse. They'd come back. Candida, same thing, come back. I ended up figuring out that I had extremely high mercury levels. And until I got the mercury down, then I was finally able to beat back the parasites. So I'm for parasite cleanses, but typically there's something upstream further that's affecting the immune system to even allow it. Now, that's not always the case. Some people can get an infection to really, just nails them pretty hard.
Right.
But typically it's something allowing it.
Did you find out what caused your mercury levels to be so high?
It took me about 4 years of
Holy
suffering.
crap.
Yeah,
4 years.
Life as I know it. I was a busy doctor at the time, seeing a lot of patients. I had 2 young boys at the time, married. Life was really good. Like most people, it started just with fatigue, and I thought I was training too hard and was just, obviously straining myself at a very high level. So I thought my adrenals were fried. They were, but it wasn't the problem. I thought my thyroid, it was not functioning normal, even though my blood work was normal, but that was not the answer. And I was working with a very bright endocrinologist at that time. I read his book because I thought my thyroid wasn't right.
Right.
And he said, Dan, I think you might have mercury toxicity. And I said, I thought so too, because I found online Mad Hatter's disease. I don't know if you know what that is, but I was mad as a hatter, trust me. But I had all the symptoms, and it was mercury toxicity. Yeah. But I ended up doing a blood test, and I said, yeah, it wasn't it. He says, that's the wrong test. If you had Mad Hatters, they were using mercury to make hats as part of the process. He said it would show up in the blood, but you probably have chronic toxicity. It won't show up in your blood. So anyways, bottom line is I did a different test, and he was right. I had mercury toxicity.
Wow.
Matter of fact, my symptoms showed up. I didn't know this at the time. Days after I had 2 silver fillings removed, And he just did it the regular way, hit it with a drill and vaporized the mercury. And I didn't know. So I went all those years unknowing.
Dang.
So I got the rest of them out correctly, where they, don't let you breathe the vapor, protect you from swallowing it, protect you from even the internal vapor. And then I started detoxing it out of my brain, that's what I teach. From pain to purpose is my story.
Yeah, there's a lot of things Western dentists who do that are questionable, right? With the fluoride too, now you're seeing that's blocking some third eye stuff.
If you just look at Google, fluoride and bone cancer, especially in boys, and you'll be like, what? Why aren't they telling us this? But the fluoride industry is a pretty crooked industry because it's very expensive to get rid of. And by putting it in water supplies was a pretty nasty trick. But the companies involved there, well, it was good for them, but not good for society.
They must have some serious financial backing or something.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know it caused cancer too.
Yeah.
I thought it was just more of like blocking the third eye, but that's even scarier.
Yeah, and of course, it's linked to thyroid problems. Even chlorine in the water. I filter your water, folks. I mean, it's a basic thing. And matter of fact, you asked me some of the big videos that have hit. I just did a shower video.
Yeah.
And just for social media, because it's showering for 10 minutes without just regular city water is equivalent to drinking 11 glasses of chlorinated water.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because you're breathing it in and the chlorine goes right into your bloodstream. Remember, chlorine is a halogen type of chemical that causes thyroid disruption. So I had doubters. So here's the test that I did. As a matter of fact, my friend Gary Brecka said, do this, man, because it'll show them, right? So took a glass of chlorinated water, just regular tap water, put my hand in it for 30 seconds. Oh, first thing I did is measured the chlorine. I showed chlorine in the water. Here's the test. Okay, great, safe to swim in. Put my hand in the water for 30 seconds, pulled it out, remeasured, no chlorine in the water. Where did it go? Went right into my bloodstream.
Holy crap.
So imagine now swimming in a pool with bromine, chlorine, both thyroid disruptors. We need to filter our water, drink filtered water, shower in filtered water. Look, if you can't afford a whole house system, buy a carbon filter for your shower head for $50. I mean, at least do that. You just have to change it every few months.
Oh my gosh. I love hot tubs, but now I might have to give them up.
Now look, and there's solutions. I mean, they can do these things with, using salt water and some UV light. So there's ways to make it healthier.
Okay.
But I don't go in hot tubs for that reason.
Yeah, that is super concerning, especially the pools. A lot of people go in pools.
Yeah.
Wow. And I had no idea as a kid growing up that it was even bad for you.
When the Europeans, when they had the Olympics, the Europeans, it's more, they swim in salt water there, right? They wanted the U.S. to dump the water and put salt water in. They didn't want to get in the pool.
Oh, yeah?
So there's something there.
Wow. It makes sense because all the kids on my swimming team in high school had to bleach their hair.
Yeah.
Because it was just discolored.
Yeah.
It's destroying your body, right?
Yeah. No, it is. So back to the question you asked. So what are these neurotoxins? I mean, here we are, right? I mean, we're exposed to so many of these things. And we haven't even talked about the food dyes that are most illegal in Europe, but yet we're still ingesting here. We haven't talked about the over-processed foods. It's like, this is why people are so sick.
Yeah, it seems like we're just getting attacked from so many different angles.
Yeah.
And we're just constantly dodging.
Yeah.
And now it's in the air, right? Chemtrails and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, just take the conspiracy out of it. The fact is just by making jet fuel more efficient, we're adding chemicals to this that's falling down on us. Yeah. And that's a problem.
So you can't even walk outside and breathe air anymore.
Yeah. I mean,
you can't drink tap water.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot.
But again, we need to, if you're living in your home, you should have some air filtration.
Right.
I do. I have filters running all the time.
I'm going to buy some when I get home. Which ones do you use?
Absolutely. Air Doctor's a great one.
Okay.
Jasper's makes a great one. There's two right there that I think are great filters. Envirotech is another good one. But yeah, I like ones that have some carbon filtration in it because it takes a lot of these chemicals that we're talking about out of the air better than just HEPA. It works better for some allergens, but carbon filtration takes a lot of the chemicals out.
Got it.
And you can get the better filters even for your HVAC unit. And that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
But filter your whole house water,
Love it. Yeah. What tests or scans do you recommend everyone should take for their health?
Yeah, look, blood tests are useful to see generally what's going on. But my blood tests were normal. Even my thyroid tests were normal. Even though my thyroid, I was losing hair, I was losing muscle and gaining fat, I knew my thyroid wasn't functioning. It might have been another 5-10 years before my blood work finally would have been out of range. But that doesn't say you don't do a blood test. C-reactive protein test is a general inflammation test that have your doctors run. Have them run specific autoimmune conditions, but most autoimmune people that don't feel well have some level of autoimmunity, but we don't have blood tests sophisticated enough to identify it yet. But we do something called a cellular inflammation test, which is a urine test, which shows oxidation of your cell membranes, because when inflammation starts, the membranes of your cells become inflamed. And remember, I said that's what blocks hormone receptors.
Yeah.
So it's a simple test that we have everyone do first. And then, there's other tests that can be done. But I think that testing sometimes is a little overrated. People today spend a lot of money on testing.
Oh, yeah.
But they're still not getting to cause. I like tests that show cause, right? I challenged the heavy metals out of my body, taking a chelator and looked at the levels in my urine. Because if I'd have just measured my urine and blood, it looked empty.
Wow.
I did that, and it showed negative. So I'm a believer in testing for cause. For mold, there's another nasty neurotoxin of why people are sick today. The way we're building buildings, it's trapping moisture in and chemicals, and all we do is add water. And drywall that's in every home has paper on it. That's called mold food. All we do is add water, mold grows. But mold is a reason why people don't feel well. There's a simple test called a VCS test, visual contrast sensitivity test, that literally when people are in moldy homes, they lose this contrast. It's not acuity. So it's literally contrast. So a sign of that may be you all of a sudden can't see at night as well. That's a sign of that. But the test is extremely accurate for biotoxic illness, which is a neurotoxin produced by a living thing like mold. So you'll fail the test miserably, but that's one that we do for causes. But people need to be aware that your home could be making you sick.
How common do you think mold is in homes?
I think today, unfortunately, it's more common than we think. It's estimated that 70 to 80% of homes have mold.
What?
Now, that said, maybe it's a small amount, but certain people are far more sensitive to it than others. And we're not talking about a mold allergy here, be clear.
Right.
That means a mold allergy, you're reacting to the spore itself. But we're talking about biotoxic illness, where you're reacting to the mycotoxin. And that is an immune problem. And it makes people very sick. Weight loss resistance, if someone had just started gaining weight suddenly because you moved, it happened when I moved into this house. Here I am a year later. I can't lose weight. I gained weight. I have major fatigue. I have weird anxiety I never had, aches and pains that I never had, digestive issues, never had that before. You might be in a moldy home, right? How do you feel when you leave that home and go on vacation? You might say, gosh, when I go on vacation, I'm so much more relaxed. And it might be because you're leaving a moldy home.
Yeah.
If you have 4 people in a home, you might get 1 or 2 that are being affected more so than the other 2. So you don't associate that. Genetics plays a role in that. However, also other neurotoxic exposures that you may be getting. Maybe you have these hidden infections that we talked about, right? Some of these other neurotoxic exposures now set you up for this fall with the mold. I call it a perfect storm. So you're going to be more sensitive.
Is there like a test people can get to see if their house has mold, or is it more just...
There's the best test that if you call a mold remediator or someone, if you just get online and find one, they're going to come and do an air test. Most of those tests will be normal, not a good test. You want a test called an ERMI test. An ERMI test looks at the dust level in your house, and that is going to be a more accurate assessment of the mold history and the mold of that home.
Interesting. Wow, there's a lot to learn, man. This is really, really interesting. Do you see the health space evolving eventually and becoming more preventative with the Western medical system in particular? Or?
Well, look, the Western medical system's just not set up for it. I mean, if you have an emergency, best system in the world in this country, right? It's set up great for that. Absolutely, get in a car accident, something, trauma related, best place to be. For chronic disease, it's not set up for it. They don't have time to say, okay, how's your house?
Yeah.
Could you be in mold? Could you have exposure to lead, mercury? It's just not set up for that.
Right.
And even if they did think that, right, then what are they going to do about it? My process, I've been teaching doctors how to deal with these causative factors for 20 years. I have a program called Pompa program that is teaching the person how to get these neurotoxins out of their brain and their body correctly, because we need to be educated in the process. If we don't do that as a family, even understand how to get these toxins out, we're going to fall into the statistics. So to answer your question, I think the key to changing healthcare is the average mom looking to help her family. Women in general pay attention to their health far more than men. Men, sorry, it's, and that, I'm not saying this across the board. I'm talking generally, women run healthcare in their homes and have more of a concern for their family. Men typically wait till they have the heart attack and then they're going, okay, honey, what do I do? Right. Yeah. But women do drive this, but I believe that is the answer, is bringing the answers directly to the person. And that's one of the benefits of social media.
Right.
My kids were the ones that said, Dad, you've been teaching doctors for 20 years. This message that I've been called to, from pain to purpose and my own battle, you're not getting it to the world. The way you're going to get it to the world is taking it directly to them in social media. And I'm like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, that business went through the roof because of the need. So we're reaching people now on social media. And I believe that is the way we're going to impact shows like yours, Rogan's. I was just on, Brecca's and other shows. We're bringing this because the need is so great.
Right.
So if we can empower people with the knowledge of this is the real reason why you don't feel well, and then the answer and the solution, I'm called to it.
Absolutely.
Part of my story, I think it's worth telling, is when I was sick, my wife, I had 2 young boys at the time, as I said. So life was not good at the time. I could barely work, and there was many days where I didn't get out of bed.
Wow, so you were that sick? You were bedridden?
I was that sick. I mean, I had days where I'd come out and start the day good and end up, back in bed.
Wow.
So my wife, literally on her knees crying out to God for an answer, for not just me, but our family. God spoke to her heart. She says, as clear as she can imagine, wasn't an audible voice, but as clear as she could imagine, not only am I going to get him well, meaning me, but he's going to take a message to the world. And when she would tell me that at that time, I would say, I can't even believe you're saying that to me. I don't want to hear that because I can't even get myself well. And so it didn't land on good ears. But she was right. I sit in this chair because of what God showed me through that battle of my own.
Wow.
To take a message to the world. So, when my kids came to me and said, Dad, here's how you're going to take this message to the world, because the world needs what you have, and teamed up with them, Pompa program was born, and we're taking a message to the world.
Incredible. And $100 million company in 4 years.
4 years.
That's unheard of in your space.
4 years. And that's, I would give my 2 things, the brilliance of my children, but they have their pain to purpose story too.
Right.
They got massive lead exposure from their mother.
Really?
So, yeah. So my wife, here's that story. My wife was battling some weird symptoms, hormone symptoms, going through perimenopause. And we didn't know what was wrong. Back then, we literally had to go to bookstores and libraries. I mean, the internet was there, but it wasn't as loaded up. I mean, we joke about it because we'd literally, go have coffee at the bookstore and look what I found. We were looking for her answer.
Wow.
And long story short, it ended up to be she inherited a lot of lead from her mother, who ended up dying of cancer.
Whoa.
She had breast cancer, went regular treatments, was considered 10 years later, she ended up being diagnosed with uterine cancer. She never got to the cause. Her mother had very high lead levels. The hormone stuff that was going on in her mother, my wife was starting. So she was about to end up like her mom. We did a test, and we tested something that showed her methylation levels. I don't know if you had some guests talk about methylation, but these little methyl groups, they get rid of toxic hormones. This is one of the things they do. They also protect our DNA. But when you make estrogen, well, estrogen ends up in something called estrogen metabolites. Many of them can be very, very toxic if they build up and drive breast cancer. My wife had those estrogen metabolites off the chart, so she was going to end up like her mom. And her methylation, her ability to methylate, to take out that toxic hormone, was depleted. Stress of any type, physical, chemical, or emotional, depletes it. We tried to give her things, B vitamins and things, to help that methylation, but it wasn't coming up. We found out later that it was her lead levels. I did a lead test, same test I did on myself. Anyways, we tested her urine with a chelator. Out came the lead, off the chart. So here we are, years later. My kids all of a sudden have these, despite eating a perfect diet, by the way, had these gut issues. My one kid was just screaming all the time. We tested their lead levels off the chart.
Wow.
My wife got it from her mother, who ended up giving it to my kids. When I do my seminars, I show those tests off the chart. Inherited the lead. So yeah, I mean,
that's crazy. That could have passed down from generation to generation.
Yeah,
like and it's on the mother side only.
Well, typically because it's stored in bone, and women lose bone during pregnancy. It's normal, hormone changes, but out comes the lead.
Got it.
So it's more. Now, dads aren't off the hook because the sperm can carry certain toxins too.
Yeah. So for women watching this, what's some advice to keep the lead levels low?
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think that doing the right detox before you get pregnant, and obviously that's not always perfect, you don't know, right? But is advisable. Number two, there are some things that you can do even during your pregnancy to minimize. Keep your bone health well. Make sure your hormone health is good. But taking things like vitamin D and vitamin K2 that are lacking today, you will lose less bone and therefore put less lead into your children in utero.
Got it.
So vitamin K2 is deficient in people today because it's in grass-fed animal products, and people don't eat grass-fed animal products. They eat grain-fed animal products. In dairy, they're eating commercial dairy, which is not grass-fed. So we lack vitamin K2. Vitamin K2 moves calcium into our bone. And then vitamin D. People are slathering on sunscreen because the fears of cancer, skin cancer, they're not getting vitamin D, which also plays a role in good bone health and hormone health. It's a pro-hormone.
Right.
So the fact is if you just do those two things, we can actually diminish that bone loss and therefore diminish the lead loss.
That's exciting. I don't use sunscreen anymore.
Yeah, I don't either. You can see how dark I am.
But no, they're doing studies on sunscreen now and how it could be potentially harmful.
Here's one of the reasons. Well, of course, the chemicals in that stuff. I'm not putting that. Anything you rub on your skin goes into your blood. Right? If you absorb chlorine from a shower, imagine what your sunscreen is doing. This is how we deliver hormones, of course. And there's hormone disruptors in sunscreen that we know are cancer causing. But there's another thing. So there's UVB and UVA rays, okay? So the UVB, you can remember it because the B burn, the UVB burn. Most sunscreens on the market, all but a handful, they only block the UVB. Why? Because you put it on and you don't burn. So, and it allows the UVA to cross through. The problem is this, it's the UVA that drives cancer. So you put the UVB blocker on the sunscreen, it allows you to stay in the sun longer, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So people do. So it increases their level of exposure to the UVA, which is also the one that wrinkles your skin, ladies. So you're out there longer getting more skin damage, more risk of cancer, and no one told you that it's because you're getting more exposure to the dangerous one, the UVA. No one should burn. That's not good. You go out in small exposures so you don't burn, but you raise your own melanin. It's good for you. And it raises your vitamin D and it raises other good hormones.
Interesting. Any biohacking things you're doing that you've measured the results and they've been pretty significant?
In the world of biohacking, we can talk a lot about this because I love cold plunges.
Yeah.
Okay. And you probably had guests on talking about the benefits of it, but I'm going to talk about a warning.
Oh.
And that was another video that went viral because cold plunges work because of a premise called hormesis. That means if you stress a biological system like us, if you adapt to that stress, you get stronger. And your body literally thinks it's going to die when you get in that cold water. And so guess what it does? It raises something called norepinephrine, which raises growth hormone, which de-inflames the body, and all these positive things happen if you adapt. So therefore, if you stay in too long and it's too much stress and you don't adapt, you have the exact opposite happen. You increase inflammation, you lower your hormones, all these bad things happen. So that's the same with exercise. Exercise is wonderful. It's a stress. You don't get stronger lifting. You get stronger when you adapt to the stress of exercise, if you adapt. But good trainers know if you overtrain or if you do the same exercise over and over again, then you don't adapt. It becomes a negative. And then you end up getting sick more often, et cetera. So all of these biohacks are forcing this premise of hormesis. We have to adapt to these biohacks to make them a positive. So there was a study showing that just 10 seconds of cold showers in the morning worked better than the 3-minute cold plunge.
Wow.
And I said, well, that doesn't surprise me. I said, because they were testing average people. And average people can't jump into a 3-minute cold bath. It's too stressful for them. They didn't work up to it, and they got a negative result. But 10 seconds, most people can adapt positively to that. So 10 seconds every day worked better than the 3-minute cold plunge periodically.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
yeah, I take 10-second cold showers, so I'm good.
Yeah, you're good. But again, I mean, there's benefits. Some people who do it a lot and they don't have a lot of stress in their life, they can adapt to 3 minutes, maybe 5.
Yeah.
And they can get a benefit. But the average person, no. So the question I get is, well, how do I know if I adapt, right? I just did a morning show yesterday, and the woman said, I started doing this high-intensity training, and I started getting insomnia. I couldn't sleep, and I was wiped out. That's a sign you're not adapting.
Whoa.
You can wear an Aura ring and look at your heart rate variability. If that starts getting affected, you're not adapting. How you feel later that day after the cold plunge, the sauna, whatever biohack you're doing, how do you feel later that day? How'd you sleep that night? And how do you feel the next day? Ask yourself those questions when you apply any stress, whether it be exercise, a hot sauna, cold bath. All of those things work by stressing the organism. And if you adapt, you get stronger. If you don't, you get weaker.
Right.
That's the principle.
Are you taking 150 supplements a day like Brian Johnson?
I do take a lot of supplements, but I take my own. So not all. I take supplements that have come from a farm that I know to a pill. And so I don't want to do a shameless plug, but yeah, I do take a lot of supplements, but I take good ones.
Yeah, it's tough because there's so many. I wonder if there's a site that can verify like the quality of these, because some of them are so cheap.
It's true. Most supplements on the market, they're getting the herbs, the products from China, India, where the air quality there is not good, so they are loaded with lead. I, for fun, have taken many products to the lab and shown the levels of toxins in those products.
That's ironic.
And, in all of the argument selfishly to show that my products don't have it. But I also learned a lesson, like, wow, you got to be really careful.
Yeah, that's ironic because these people are taking these thinking it's good for them, and there's lead in them.
Yeah.
Like it's actually worse.
A lot of lead, yeah.
That's scary, yeah, because you see the price on Amazon, and you're like, oh, it's cheaper, let me get it. But you're sacrificing the quality, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And binders right now are very popular. To take,
binders?
Yeah, charcoals, carbons, bentonite clays, humic acids. These things hold toxins. So you have to be very careful because a lot of them come from the ground.
Right.
And therefore they're contaminated naturally.
Yeah, someone just told me that because I take Shilajit for my testosterone, but he was saying there might be heavy metals in it.
Yeah, listen, you could probably spend $80 to $100, send it to a lab and say, could you test this for just heavy metals? And they'll test it for you.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Are you using those PEMF mats that Brecca's using?
Yeah, I use those. I have a PEMF device called Pulse that I use, and I have some mats as well. I like PEMF.
I want to try those out. I haven't done it yet.
Yeah, and those are biohacks. But again, too much of anything is not good, as we discussed.
Right. Yeah, you can always overdo it, man.
Yep.
There's people, what do you think about this Wi-Fi stuff and this 5G stuff?
Yeah, no, there's obviously something to it. When I was sick, I remember the day that I learned about EMF because I had my phone. I was tethering to my computer, right? So I had it on hotspot, and I got a phone call. And so I walked away from the table where I was doing that, and I had the phone next to my head, right?
Yeah.
Like we do. And I started getting these weird symptoms. And I realized, I was like, it's the phone.
Wow.
And it took me literally hours to like get rid of the brain fog that I had. So I was like, I think it was the phone. I'm telling you, right? And then I started doing some more research, but I remember, and now again, my level of tolerance, my stress bucket was very full. I was sick, right? So it was a small exposure, but just because you're tolerating that doesn't make it good for you. By the way, when you look at the contract, how few of us actually look at it, that you sign for an iPhone, it says that you acknowledge that you know that studies show it causes brain tumors on the side that we hold our phones. So I had a good friend. He put his phone right here all the time.
Yeah.
And he got lung cancer on that side.
Oh my God.
I had a guy, so this guy was the brightest electrical engineer. I asked him the question you asked me, so what do you think about the EMF?
Yeah.
And he said, well, I didn't believe in any of it until this happened to me. He said, driving, and I drive a lot, I would put my cell phone on this thigh and drive along, and I would just pull it off that thigh. He said, I developed a cancerous tumor right there, and he showed me the hole where they cut it out.
No way.
He's like, so I'm a believer now. Yeah,
Holy
so I mean,
crap.
there is no doubt about it that those electromagnetic frequencies are affecting. Distance is your friend. It's like if you see me with my phone, I always have it on speakerphone.
Same.
And if you see a phone in my back pocket, grab it, because I promise you it's on airplane. I mean, if I pop it in there just to pick up a suitcase or move something, I'd pop it in there for that second, right? Time and distance are the key, So, but if I'm putting it in there for any length of time, it's on airplane mode, or I put it in my bag. I don't put it directly on me.
Yeah, I used to put it in my pocket.
Yeah, no, you don't want that.
What do you think about those anti-EMF chips? Because I spent like $1,000 on them. I don't even know if they work, but it's on the back of all my devices.
Yeah, look, I've measured some of them for fun, and some of them will pull the EMF a little bit away. Here's another social media video I did. I tested the ones that go in the ear. Yeah. It got shut down, so we don't want it's like, so we don't want that to happen. But the ones that go in the ear, it was 1,000 times higher than a safe level.
Holy crap! Compared
to the ones that are wired in, the earphones that are wired in, and that's going right into your head. So that video got shut down.
But, I bet Apple shut that down.
Yeah, I know. So, but it was millions of views before it did. So, but the fact is that I tested a little thing. It was a little piece of foil that you put on them. Yeah. And I was skeptical, I'm going to be honest with you, but it worked. So what it did is it pulled it away from your head and basically distracted it out that way. Oh. So it actually worked. It wasn't a complete, but I was impressed that it actually worked. So the best thing was the wire that tested the best. So some of those things will pull some of the EMF away. But remember, if you block your phone, it doesn't work. So you'll see I have a defender shield around my phone, around the backside, which blocks the hand, but it still has to pick up signal. Got it. So otherwise, you put it in a Faraday bag, that'll protect you, but now you don't get a signal, right? So, and a lot of the things that are in homes, I'm skeptical of that. I think a lot of the ones that put out some electrons can help protect us from EMF, and that would be a different conversation.
Interesting. Dr. Pompa, it's been fun, man. Anything you want to promote or close off with?
Yeah, look, if you want to know more, I did a free training. They could go to pompaprogram.com, watch a free training. It's the same training I did for doctors, and more on the topics that we talked about. I would say more about the solution. People can go there.
We'll link it below. Thanks for coming on,
man, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you learned something and can improve your health and lifestyle. I'll see you tomorrow.